Welcome to Friday. And I've got such a treat for you. And in fact, what it is a book that is part of a most wondrous Notting Hill editions series of volumes. This is one on dogs with an introduction by Tracey Ullman. Now, take a look at this cover that I'm holding in front of you, because, as those of you who know me know, nothing I like better than a digression. Before I even start with what I'm going to do, I'm going to digress. And it is part of that wondrous process that occurs when you start reading something of great relevance. Because this cover, notice, isn't that a dog on it? What's that signature down below? Picasso. I bet there's a story. Well, there is. Many years ago, I got this book because I had a dachshund whose name was Lafitte d'Orléans. And it just so happened that my parents got him when we were living in New Orleans. And he was a little bit of a pirate. But this dog is named Lump. The book is Picasso and Lump, a Dachshund's Odyssey. And it was by photographs from David Douglas Duncan, a gentleman that many of you may be familiar with because he did so many truly wonderful photographs in his era. And one of the things that he did was for a company, Mercedes. They did a wonderful new car that had gull wings, the wings that come up. And he did a series of photographs for them. And they liked him so much that they paid him with those. Take a look at the gull wing, but also take a look at who's in the gull wing. Happens to be Lump. Now, herein lies a story, because David Douglas Duncan had another dog, an Afghan, who really wanted nothing more than to eat Lump. So poor Lump, as a puppy, that's what Lump looked like as a puppy, had some real existential issues in his life. So David Duncan was called down to Picasso at Villa l'Américaine in Provence, in the southern part of France. And he decided separate is probably the best thing. So he drove down, because among other things, Mercedes did give him one of those gull wings too. Nobody ever paid me for photographs like that, but my photographs have never been that good, I guess. Anyway, he takes him down, and guess what? See that photograph? Notice a plate, and it looks like there's a picture of a dachshund on it. This was in honor of the very first day that Lump arrived at Villa l'Américaine and made a very strong impression on Picasso. And that woman in the back is Jacqueline, who was one of his loves of his life. I wanted to show you at least one other photograph. And I think I'm going to slip to two. And you can see Lump right there. He's all but talking to Picasso. A point that has oftentimes been made, you'll hear one artist compared to another, and unless you really know your art, you sort of get lost in the fray here. But one of the artists, historic artists that affected Picasso, was Las Minas, the painting that Velasquez did. And just to remind you, do you notice that? That's a very small reproduction of his painting. Next to it, in black and white, is, and by the way, notice my bouncing finger. There's a dog. Son of a gun. Now let's take a look at the black and white Picasso, which interprets the Velázquez painting, Las Niñas. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a white hot dog down there, isn't there? That is Lump. And Lump is indeed a dog, but he's replacing the royal dog that was in Las Niñas. And my point being, oftentimes inspiration strikes in so many different places, and it's worthwhile to know the historical context of somebody that we consider to be of basically our generation. Now, I think I might just get to the point of the whole program, but I had to take you on this journey and to show you how a book that I discovered at Story and Song led me to rediscover a book that I had already in my collection, and it has enriched the experience so much. Now, there's a little quotable quote, and there are actually many in this book, but Edward Hoagland says, in order to really enjoy a dog, one doesn't merely try to train him to be semi-human. The point of it is to open oneself to the possibility of becoming partly a dog. And I'm sure dog people will relate to that. What the story that I'm going to read to you is by James Thurber. It's not the first time we've come across this classic American humorist, part of the round table of the Algonquin. James Thurber, 1894 to 1961, was an American humorist whose writings and drawings appeared frequently in The New Yorker. It's a magazine that's still being published today. He began his career as a newspaperman and went on to develop an idiosyncratic observational humor in hundreds of essays, short stories, fables, and drawings collected in more than 30 books. And there's a picture of a French bulldog that's beginning this story, and the story starts. Probably no one man should have as many dogs in his life as I have had, but there was more pleasure than distress in them for me, except in the case of an Airedale named Muggs. That's not an Airedale. That's a random dog. French bulldog. He gave me more trouble than all the other 54 or 5 put together. Although my moment of keenest embarrassment was the time a Scotch terrier named Jeannie, who had just had 6 puppies in the clothes closet of a 4th floor apartment in New York, had the unexpected 7th and last at the corner of 11th Street and 5th Avenue during a walk she had insisted on taking. Then, too, there was the prize-winning French poodle, a great big black poodle. Oh, none of your little untroublesome white miniatures who got sick riding in the rumple seat of the car with me on her way to the Greenwich Dog Show. She had a red rubber bib tucked around her throat, and since a rainstorm came up when we were halfway through the Bronx, I had to hold over her a small green umbrella. Oh, really, more sort of a parasol. The rain beat down fearfully, and suddenly the driver of the car drove into a big garage filled with mechanics. It happened so quickly that I forgot to put the umbrella down, and I will always remember with sickening distress the look of incredulity mixed with hatred that came over the face of the particular hardened garage man that came over to see what we wanted when he took a look at me and the poodle. All garage men and people of that intolerant stripe hate poodles with their curious haircut. Oh, especially, the pom poms that you got to leave on their hips if you expect a dog to win a prize. But the Airedale, as I have said, was the worst of all my dogs. He wasn't really my dog, as a matter of fact. I came home from a vacation one summer to find that my brother Roy had bought him while I was away. A big, burly, choleric dog. He always acted as if he thought I wasn't one of the family. There was a slight advantage in being one of the family, for he didn't bite the family as often as he bit strangers. Still, in the years that we had him, he bit everybody but Mother. Oh, and he made a pass at her once, but missed. That was during the month when we suddenly had mice, and Muggs refused to do anything about them. Nobody ever had mice exactly like the mice we had that month. They acted like pet mice, almost like mice somebody had trained. They were so friendly that one night when Mother entertained a dinner at the Feralius, a club she and my father had belonged to for 20 years, she put down a lot of little dishes with food in them on the pantry floor so that the mice would be satisfied with that and wouldn't come into the dining room. Muggs stayed out in the pantry with the mice, lying on the floor, growling to himself. Oh, not at the mice, but almost all the people in the next room that he would, have liked to get at. Mother slipped out into the pantry once to see how everything was going. Everything was going fine. It made her so mad to see Muggs lying there, oblivious to the mice. They came running up to her that she slapped him, and he slashed at her. But he didn't make it. He was sorry immediately, Mother said. Oh, he was always sorry, she said, after he bit someone, but we could not understand how she figured this out. Huh. He didn't act sorry. Mother used to send a box of candy every Christmas to the people the Airedale bit. The list finally contained 40 or more names. Nobody could understand why we didn't get rid of the dog. I didn't understand it very well myself, but we didn't get rid of him. I think that one or two people tried to poison Muggs. He acted poisoned once in a while, and old Major Mobley fired at him once with his service revolver near the Seneca Hotel in East Broad Street. But Muggs lived to be almost 11 years old, and even when he could hardly get around, he bit congressmen who had called to see my father on business. My mother had never liked the congressman. She said the signs of his horoscope showed he couldn't be trusted. Oh, he was Saturn with the moon in Virgo. But she sent him a box of candy that Christmas. He sent it right back, probably because he suspected it was trick candy. Mother persuaded herself it was all for the best that the dog had bitten him, even though father lost an important business association because of it. I wouldn't be associated with such a man, mother said. Muggs could read him like a book. We used to take turns feeding Muggs to be on his good side, but that didn't always work. He was never in a very good humor, even after a meal. Nobody knew exactly what was the matter with him, but whatever it was, it made him irascible, especially in the morning. Roy never felt very well in the morning either, especially before breakfast. And once when he came downstairs and found that Muggs had moodily chewed up the morning paper, he hit him in the face with a grapefruit and then jumped up on the dining table, scattering dishes and silverware and spilling the coffee. Muggs' first free leap carried him all the way across the table and into a brass fire screen in front of the gas grate. But he was back on his feet in a moment, and in the end, he got Roy and gave him a pretty vicious bite in the leg. Then he was all over it. Oh, he never bit anyone more than once at a time. Mother always mentioned that as an argument in his favor. She said he had a quick temper, but that he didn't hold a grudge. She was forever defending him. I think she liked him because he wasn't well. He's not strong, she would say, pityingly, but that was inaccurate. He might not have been well, but he was terribly strong. One time, my mother went to the Chittenden Hotel to call on a woman mental healer who was lecturing in Columbus on the subject of harmonious vibrations. She wanted to find out if it was possible to get harmonious vibrations into a dog. He's a large tan-colored Airedale, Mother explained. Oh, the woman said she had never treated a dog, but she advised my mother to hold the thought that he did not bite and would not bite. Mother was holding the thought the very next morning when Muggs got the Iceman. But she blamed that slip-up on the Iceman. If you didn't think he would bite you, he wouldn't, Mother told him. He stomped out of the house in a terrible jangle of vibrations. One morning when Muggs bit me slightly, more or less in passing, I reached down and grabbed his short, stumpy tail and hoisted him into the air. Oh, it was a foolhardy thing to do, and the last time I saw my mother about 6 months ago, she said she didn't know what possessed me. I don't either, except that I was pretty mad. As long as I held that dog off and the floor by his tail, he couldn't get at me. But he twisted and jerked so, snarling all the time, that I realized I couldn't hold him very long. Carried him into the kitchen and flung him onto the floor and shut the door on him just as he crashed against it. But I forgot about the back stairs. Muggs went up the back stairs and down the front stairs and had me cornered in the living room. I managed to get up onto the mantelpiece above the fireplace, but it gave way and came down with a tremendous crash, throwing a large marble clock, several vases, and myself heavily on the floor. Muggs was so alarmed by the racket that when I picked myself up, he had disappeared. We couldn't find him anywhere, although we whistled and shouted until old Mrs. Detweiler called after dinner that night. Muggs had bitten her once in the leg, and she came into the living room only after we assured her that Muggs had run away. She had just seated herself when, with a great growling and scratching of claws, Muggs emerged from under a davenport where he had been quietly hiding all the time and bit her again. Well, that's one of many adventures Muggs had. And we conclude with a few months before Muggs died, he got into seeing things. He would rise slowly from the floor, growling low, and stalk stiff-legged and menacing toward nothing at all. Sometimes the thing would be just a little to the right or left of a visitor. Once, a full of brush salesman got hysterics. Muggs came wandering into the room like Hamlet following his father's ghost. His eyes were fixed on a spot just to the left of the fuller brush man, who stood it until Muggs was about 3 slow, creeping paces from him. Then he shouted. Muggs wavered on past him into the hallway, grumbling to himself, but the fuller brush man went on shouting. I think Mother had to throw a pan of cold water on him before he stopped. That was the way she used to stop us boys when we got into fights. Muggs died quite suddenly one night. Mother wanted to bury him in the family plot under a marble stone with some such inscription as flights of angels sing thee to thy rest. But we persuaded her that it was against the law. In the end, we just put up a smooth board above his grave along a lonely road. On the board I wrote with an indelible pencil, Cav Genum. Mother was quite pleased with the simple, classic dignity of the old Latin epitaph. And there are so many other wondrous stories in here from anybody you can imagine. But in the end, there's something called tale pieces that I particularly enjoyed. And I'm going to spend our closing few moments reading a few of those for your delectation. Donald McCaig said, dogs are notorious for hope. Dogs believe that this morning, this very morning, may begin a day of fascination, easily grander than any day in the past. Now, my best friend, Groucho Marx, said, outside of a dog, a book is man's best friend. Inside of a dog, oh, it's too dark to read. Josh Billings said, money will buy a pretty good dog, but it won't by the wag of his tail. Martin Luther said, be comforted, little dog, thou too in resurrection shall have a little golden tail. Diogenes says, I am called a dog because I fawn on those who give me anything. I yelp at those who refuse, and I set my teeth in rascals. Boy, those Greeks know a lot. Ricky Gervais says, oh, this should be a needlepoint across stitch. Be the person your dog thinks You are. Now, Marilyn Monroe said, I like animals. If you talk to a dog or a cat, it doesn't tell you to shut up. Jerry Seinfeld says, dogs are the leaders of the planet. If you see two life forms, one of them making a poop, the other one carrying it for him, who would you assume is in charge? Mahatma Gandhi. Free, open love I have looked upon as dogs love. Secret love is, besides, cowardly. Albert Einstein. The dog is very smart. He feels sorry for me because I receive so much mail. Oh, that's why he tries to bite the mailman. Coco Chanel, for all you fashionistas, they will wait forever. They love you that much. Oh, so much more awaits you. Do explore this book. And do remember, we had a journey before we even began, just with Lump, who was Picasso's dog. Till next Friday. See you then.